introduce you to our audience?
Okay, hi.
𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿 is a leadership strategist, speaker, and founder of the Online Leadership Academy, CIC, with over 2 decades of experience across corporate, entrepreneurial, and faith-based sectors. She empowers women to align their professional goals with their core values. Her purpose-driven approach focuses on transforming leadership from the inside out, where identity fuels innovation and ethics shape impact. 𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐻 is passionate about helping women embrace their God-given potential and lead with integrity. She champions bold, courageous, and ethical leadership that never compromises authenticity. That was inspiring by 𝐸𝐻𝐿𝐻, and the stage is all yours.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Just checking. That's brilliant. My slides are up. Okay, great. So hello and good afternoon to you as well. So good afternoon. What a joy and a real privilege it is to be with you here today, even if it is kind of virtually. Okay. So it's great to be amongst some amazing women. I've been listening to lots of people's presentations. So women who are building, leading and innovating in the world. So I'm going to take a little bit of a risk, if I may, and that I'm going to kind of ask you if you kind of like would give me your full attention. So what I'd like to share with you today, I'd like your full attention, but also your full participation. So I'd like you to be able to talk to me in the chat so that we can really make this an interactive session. So please feel free just to say hi. Great, fantastic, so I can know that people are in the room. And if you would pop the number 100 in the chat, if you're going to engage with me and be engaged fully 100%. So stick some 100s in the chat so that I know that you're here with me. Okay, hi, I've got Keith, we've got Zainab, got Karen. If I could have those numbers, that would be great as well. Okay, so thank you for being here with me. So let me just start by asking you this. Let me ask you this. Have you ever felt like you're kind of performing all the time, but somehow you're still not being fully seen? So you're performing all the time, but somehow you're still not being fully seen. So if that kind of resonates with you in any way, or you can relate to that, can you just put the number one in a chat? So if you could put number 1 in the chat for me, so I could just go, actually, okay, I'm not the only one. Okay, so if you feel like you're performing all the time, but somehow you're not fully seen, if I could have a 1 in the chat, that would be great. Okay. So let's move on. Okay, so we are living in an era that's obsessed with innovation. We're told to move fast, push harder, deliver more, and somehow do it all with a smile and do it by yesterday. But here's the thing. What if the most radical innovation in this moment isn't speed? What if it's soul? What if it's time to lead change, not by force, but with grace? So would you agree with me that in the world of business, we've made efficiency a virtue, but at what cost? So let me be real for a moment, okay? We celebrate high performance, but we forget to honour human presence. I'd love somebody to give me an amen, or at least a smile, so that I know that you know what I'm talking about. So a smile, an emoji, or something that would make sense. Okay, hi, cool. So we're actually praised for what we produce, but rarely honoured for who we are. The truth is that innovation that isn't rooted in values often turns into exploitation. And when we lead from pressure, we disconnect from our power and the very brilliance that we're meant to bring to the table. Now, what I believe is that when we lead from alignment, we ignite something sustainable, something real. Because true innovation doesn't begin with tools or technology. It begins with identity. I believe that every woman carries a unique brilliance, not a performance, but a presence. It's not something that you acquire, but it's something that you remember. It's something you were born with: wisdom, creativity, discernment, empathy, vision. And yet that brilliance gets buried. It often gets buried under the pressure to conform, the pressure to compete, the pressure to remain acceptable in systems that just weren't built for us. Now, let me just share a quick story with you, if I may. So years ago, I worked in the motor manufacturing industry. And I was one of the few women, and even fewer women of colour. I think maybe I was the only woman of colour in management at that time. The culture was tough. It was traditional. And let's just say it wasn't built for voices like mine. Now, remember, at that time, we had a company-wide initiative running where we were looking at quality, a quality campaign, and we gave out gold kind of ear-shaped buttons, pins or badges to those who were committed to listening. I had one, and so did the chief engineer that I was supporting as a personal manager. He had one too. So I'm going to call him Bob for today, okay? Now, Bob was all energy. You know, he had a massive, big personality. And he was kind of, you know, if you're not on my bus, you're under it. He was that kind of a guy. And I remember in one meeting, we were kind of talking and going around the room, and he kind of smiled or smirked, kind of looked at me, and it was a people development meeting. And he said, you know, we all know that people are our greatest asset, right, 𝐕𝐻𝐻𝐿? Now, in that moment, I had a choice. I could laugh it off and stay safe, or I could speak up and risk being shut out. I chose my voice. And I said, Bob, if you really believe that, then keep wearing your badge. But if not, then maybe take it off. Silence. Deadly silence. After the meeting, he called me back. Now, in that moment, I thought, that's it. My lovely career was over. You know, I was done. I might as well go and collect my P45, or I was going to be marched out by security. Instead, he said, 𝐕𝐻𝐻𝐿, now I know that you've got teeth, and I respect you for that. That moment changed everything. You know, over the next couple of years, we built a real trust. We created some powerful people development strategies for the whole of the engineering function, and we did these things together. Now, some of you know that feeling, don't you? You know, showing up, delivering, but wondering, have I gone quiet? Have I compromised my voice just to stay in the room? So I don't know if anybody's been like that, you know, just, you know, let me know in the emoji, in the chat, if any of those resonates with you. You see, I believe that when we lead from calling, not comparison, you know, our leadership carries weight. You see, your brilliance isn't optional, it's your assignment. I'll say that again. Your brilliance isn't optional, it's your assignment. So I'd like you to thank you. I'd like you to drop a why in the comments if you agree, and if you're going to reclaim that truth today, that your brilliance isn't optional, it's your assignment. That's fantastic. I love those yeses. Keep them coming. I love those yeses, love those whys. This is great. Okay. Now let's talk about grace for a moment, but not as politeness, but as power with restraint. You see, here's the thing. Disruption doesn't have to be brutal to be effective. So I don't know if you want to write that down, but disruption doesn't have to be brutal to be effective. See, grace is the quiet force that breaks down cycles without breaking people. It allows us to challenge the status quo without becoming it. So I'd like to introduce you to a simple model to give you a sense of what disruptive grace looks like in practice. And I'm going to be using the letters G-R-A-C-E. Okay, so G stands for groundedness. Ensure that you stay rooted in your values and who you are. R stands for resilience. Your ability to keep standing even when things shake or it's really hard. A stands for authenticity. Be real, showing up as yourself in every situation, even in rooms that reward roles or when it's easier just to perform. C stands for conviction. Inhabit your voice. Speak up even when your voice trembles. You know, sometimes when you speak with the tremble in your voice, it has additional power, there's authenticity, there's a realness that really makes a difference. So use your voice even if it trembles. And then E stands for empathy. Your ability to disrupt with heart, where you create space for others while holding your own. Now, you might want to write this next bit down, okay? So grab a pen, paper, or something, and maybe, you know, put the word ready in the chat when you're ready, but you might want to write this next bit down. Okay. You see, when we lead like this, when we lead with grace, we don't just innovate, we transform. And we transform with our integrity intact. I'll say that again. When we lead with grace, we don't just transform. We actually, we transform. Sorry, we don't just innovate. We transform, and we transform with our integrity intact. So I'd love to hear from you. So just please drop in the chat for me, just which letter from the grace model actually speaks to you most and why. So just drop the letter and maybe share your why in the chat. So which one resonates with you or speaks out to you most of all? So G for groundedness, resilience, authenticity, conviction, or empathy. Which one speaks to you most? All of them? Some of them? Let me know. I guess if I had to choose one, I think it would be a mixture between authenticity and conviction. But I like all of them. Okay, so which one resonates with you? It'd be great to hear your thoughts as I move on. Now, another thing. We're talking about innovation, but innovation is everywhere. We've got AI, automation, agile, everything. But let me ask you this. Is it making us more whole, more human, more connected? We are surrounded by tools that promise speed, but often they pull us away from soul. As women leaders, our challenge and our calling is not just to adopt new technologies and drive outcomes. It's to choose how innovation is used and who ultimately it serves. So here's a mindset shift that I'd love you to take away. And you might want to write this down as well. Okay, so innovation isn't just what we build, it's how we build it, and it's who we become as we're building it. So innovation is not just what we build, it's how we build it and who we become as we're building it. So we have an opportunity to use our roles, not just to keep up, but to call up new ways of leading, ways that honour people, ways that hold space for reflection, not just reaction, ways that prioritise legacy, not just the ledger. And I want to offer you this as a reflection. What if the most revolutionary thing that you can do is to lead in a way that heals? Because the systems that we're part of, we need more than just disruption. They need redirection. They need more leaders who will ask, well, what will this build beyond the bottom line? Now, all this stuff that I'm talking about isn't just theory. It's real leaders and real companies that are proving that it works. So I'm just looking in there. Fantastic. Some question, authenticity. Fantastic. Definitely. to come back to that. So if we just take Patagonia as an example, they built a brand not around fast fashion, but around environmental purpose. Their dedication to sustainability revolutionized the outdoor clothing industry, and they consistently outperformed competitors while staying true to their values. Or look at Dr. Bronner's, a family-owned soap company that kept ethical practices at its core. For them, it was making sure there was fair wages, there were living benefits, there was mental health support for all employees. And they still, with all of that going on, grew to be America's top-selling natural soap brand. So these companies, these are companies that show that when you innovate from your soul, when you remain rooted in identity, values, and legacy, you don't just survive, you thrive. Now, who wouldn't want some of that? Now, I'm hoping that you can see that when we lead, that the way we lead should create space for others. It should model what wholeness looks like at the table of influence. So here's a radical thought. And you might want to take this one down as well. So if you've got a few notes going on, take this one down. What if you're not meant to fit the system? What if you're meant to reshape it? I'll say that again. What if you're not meant to fit the system? What if you're meant to reshape it, and to reshape it with integrity, with purpose and grace? So drop a yay or a big grin in the emoji, or an emoji in the chat if you're ready to be that kind of innovator, somebody who's gonna reshape with integrity, purpose and grace. Yeah. Okay. Just looking at what people are saying. Okay, so consider this. When you disrupt with grace, you're not just innovating, you're remodeling something that the world desperately needs. Purpose-driven, values-rooted, grace-infused leadership. Now let's just pause for a moment. Okay, so just close your eyes or soften your gaze. And we're going to just take 3 slow, conscious breaths. And on the inhale, I want you to draw in your brilliance. And on the exhale, any pressure or need to perform. So on the inhale, your brilliance. And then breathe out the pressure or need to perform. Inhale and exhale. And one more. Inhale and exhale. So here's my invitation to you today. I want to encourage you to unleash your brilliance, not to impress or for applause, but to impact. I want you to disrupt with grace, not for noise or to prove a point, but for necessary change. And I want you to lead boldly, not from pressure or performance, but from presence. You see, what the world needs is not more perfect women. It needs your clarity, it needs your courage and your conviction. And it needs you, gracefully disruptive, powerfully present, and unshakably rooted. My name's 𝐕𝐻𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿. I'm the founder of the Online Leadership Academy and creator of the Gifted for Action brand. I help faith-driven leaders align their talents, their values, and their gifts to lead with purpose, to build with integrity, and create phenomenal success personally, professionally, and spiritually. I love nothing more than to help visionary leaders like you unleash their brilliance, multiply their influence, and step boldly into purpose-fueled impact, whilst being generously rewarded for the transformation that they create. So just before we finish off, I'm just going to check in with what we've said. So I've had to speak with tremble in my voice, but it was well worth it. And that's fantastic. That's great. And we're going to come back to the questions in a minute. We've got authenticity. That's a real part from the GRACE model. That's fantastic because it's a foundation of lasting joy, of trust and impact. And we've got people who love Dr. Brilliance. So this is fantastic. Okay, so I really want to thank you. Thank you so much for, for showing up and for participating. It's truly been an honor to share this space. I really want you to hear that. And I'm going to put a link in the chat now. And so that's, hopefully it should go in. Okay, so that's the link in the chat. And that's to download the kind of session companion guide. So it's just for those of you who have attended my session today. So you can go in and download that for yourself. And I would love to stay connected with you. So please feel free to connect with me, either email me directly, connect with me on LinkedIn, which would be great. We can continue having conversations, or you can drop me a quick message on WhatsApp. And then finally, if anything that I've shared resonates with you, or you'd like to explore or find out how I can maybe support you, then feel free to use the QR code and book some time in my diary. So just use the QR code and we can arrange that. Just remember that I am in the UK, and so we are 5 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time. So you just might want to remember that one, okay? But yeah, book in my diary and let's take the conversation further. So thank you. I think we've got about 5 minutes left or a little bit more, for any questions. If there's any quick questions or burning questions before I close out. So I'm just going to look at what we've got in the chat. Oh, we've got loads of people in the chat. Okay, let's have a look. You're the designer of your own life, definitely. Thank you, Cindy. How can you challenge a status quo without alienating others? I think that's a brilliant question. That's a brilliant question. Oftentimes when we want to challenge, it's because we've got some energy or some passion around what we want to change. But, what I always say is to share yourself authentically, share the emotions that you may be experiencing so people get a sense of you, and also share why. What is it that you want to change, or why you're making a suggestion? And that can takes any of the heat out of what you may be expressing. So share your why, share kind of what you're wanting to see, so the vision if things could change for the better. Those are things that you can do that. And also take the time to find out what other people think. They may have some same views as you, similar views to you, or they may have just things that are a little bit different. But if you make the time to hear where people are coming from, that helps you to do change together rather than alienating. So I hope that helps. What else have you got? I'm just looking at the time. What does it look like to lead disruption from a place of empathy and integrity? That's another good one. Again, it's that whole thing about being real, being you. Often I get kind of told, there are loads of consultants out there, but what we like about you is that you're real, you come at things with a real way. And I think that's what, empathy and integrity is, being real. It's really being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So when have you been in a similar situation? When have you faced the very thing that you're asking other people to do? And be able to give your stories, share your experiences, and do that with authenticity. And that often shows that you're able to understand. And I think a really great leadership principle is not to ask somebody to do something that you haven't done or you wouldn't be willing to do yourself. And I guess working alongside people is another way where you're showing empathy and integrity together. So I hope that answers that one. Let's have a look. And the last one I can see on here is, how do you balance boldness and humility when driving change? Gosh, these are great questions. So how do you balance boldness and humility? Sometimes for me, I need to take a deep breath and take a step back to almost get my emotions in check. especially when I'm really passionate about something, or I kind of see injustice, or things that I just believe are wrong and I need to change. I just need to take a step back and then kind of think about my message, think about who I'm speaking to, and think about the desired effect that I would like to have. And how do I want to show up as a leader in the space that I want to speak into? And I think that helps me, that helps me just to come at things with less energy, because I do have a lot of energy and not everybody can handle that. So it's part of understanding that as well. And again, everybody's on their own journey. And so to give people the space and the time to show up as themselves, and I don't have all the answers, I just have some ideas. And so what I like to do is to come to the table and be open about, I've got some ideas, but I'd like us to work together to come up with a solution. And I think when you're willing to do that, humility is a really kind of collaborating and a force that brings people together. So I hope that helps. But at the end of the day, I do think, we are called to be bold. And, when things need to be said, we need to take that deep breath, take that risk sometimes, and say what needs to be said. But just remember, we're humans and other people are human too. So I think that's my 25 minutes. I hope that helps. I don't know if you've got any more questions for me. And yeah, that's my 25 minutes up.
Yes, Mayanka, that was a wonderful presentation. Yeah, and thank you for your valuable time and taking your valuable time and taking your time for answering your questions. Yeah, that was a fantastic. And
thank you.
Be on the backstage and join in the next session.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much, guys. And please do, I'd love to be in touch with you. So please connect with me. It'd be fantastic. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.